Well, you've just begun writing the French language, and already I'm afraid I have to throw at you right off the bat probably the most difficult aspect of writing the French language that you're going to have to deal with, and that is how to write the present simple verb conjugations. They call themselves present. It calls itself the present simple tense, but it's not simple in writing. It's not simple because of our old nemesis, the existence of silent letters. And in English, you can think of, take the verb to find. I find, you find, he finds, we find, you find, they find. 5 of the 6 forms, looks like 7, but it's supposed to be it's 6. 5 of the 6 forms are find, and only the he or she form, third person singular, is finds. Only a slight change in the spelling, adding an S in the third person singular in English. Well, in French, take the same verb, trouver. Je trouve, tu trouves, il trouve, and then the plural, il and elle, plural, trouve. Sounds like they're all spelled the same. Well, those 4 that all sound the same in written form, you didn't realize this as you were learning to speak initially, there are 3 different spellings within those 4 different identically sounding conjugations or forms. And then, of course, we have trouvons and trouver. And so the verb to find in French, trouver, has 5 different spellings in the present simple tense. Nonetheless, let us not lose heart. I'm going to propose you 3 different ways for you to learn how to write French verb conjugations, how to remember the proper form in written form of a verb's conjugation in French in the present tense. And you can choose which of the 3 seems most suitable to you. I'm going to push one of the 3, my method. But the first method is absolutely absurd, and that's rote memorization of the conjugation of every single kind of verb, every verb that exists that you come across. The second method is grouping into groups, and this is the traditional method. The many different groups that exist, really, of verbs in French, and learning. I'll show you in a second. Learning this, how you modify the stem, and what the different endings are for the conjugations, or the endings for those verbs. And then the third approach is my approach, the simplified approach, which won't be perfect. This is an imperfect science, all of it. All right, but it will greatly simplify the task into 3 different steps: sound, silent, endings. Sound, silent, endings, which I think you'll find that will be the simplest solution. But nonetheless, let's take a look at lesson 5.4, and I'll present those 3 methods to you right now. So here we are in lesson 5.4, and you see at the top of the first section, you're simply to read the following information. That's what it is. These are not activities to perform, just information to read. The first, you see the number 1 right here, that indicates this is the first method for learning to write a verb's conjugation in French in the present simple tense. Here's the second method, and here's my method down here. And this may look like an Einsteinian formula, but it's really far simpler than what it appears, as I will explain. Now, the first method, you can, as you click right here on this image of me reading something, it will open for you a spreadsheet, and here you have all the conjugations of the verbs found in the first 2 units of the ULET program. Acheter, for example. Here's the spelling of acheter with je as its subject. J'achète, tu achètes, different spelling. Il achète, same as the first. Nous achetons, vous achetez, ils achètent, same sound, different spelling. Look at all those letters at the end, and you're not even saying them. Nonetheless, you could learn all of the conjugations of these verbs, but remember, these are only the ones found in the first 2 units of the ULET program. What about all the others that you're going to be exposed to thereafter? Is that really a reasonable approach? No, it's absurd that you're going to memorize all of those conjugations. And so for each verb. And so the second approach is the traditional one, the one by which in middle school and in high school I learned. Actually, it was in middle school that this step was learned. We were taught that there are different groupings of verbs, and we are told what to do to conjugate them. The first part of a verb is called its stem. So you see here in white, this is the stem of the verb parler, P-A-R-L. And then you have the ending in red there. It's an ER verb, a verb ending in ER. And this is the most common kind of verb. You know, parler, jouer, donner, habiter, regarder, etc. You know those verbs already. Okay? And so the stem and the ending, we're taught what do you drop from the verb, and with parler, you simply drop the ending, the ER, and what do you add? What is the ending that you add based upon what its subject is? For je, it's I, for tu, it's es, for il, it's I, For nous, it's ONS. For vous, it's easy. Not that easy, but it's easy. And il and L plural, it's ENT, completely silent, by the way. Okay? So there's a number of things to learn just about the first type of verb. What you drop from the original form of the verb, and leaving just the stem, and then what different endings you add based upon which subject you are using. And then you come to the second type of verb. Those are the RE verbs, and you could say they exist in two different types. You have the vast majority of those, which are still in the minority, ER the more common. You have the RE verbs, vendre, entendre, descendre, all verbs that you know orally thus far. And you learn which are the what you drop from the verb. The ending you drop is the RE ending from the original form of the verb, called the infinitive, and you add to that SS blank. For E and L, you don't add anything. So in the ER verbs, you added ESE for the first three subjects, je, tu, il, and elle. And for the RE verbs, instead of ESE, you add SS blank, SS nothing, and then ONS, EZ, ENT. All right? And then we come to the prendre verbs. I group these together because you have a number of them in this category. Any verb that is prendre or has prendre inside it, like comprendre, apprendre, reprendre, surprendre, and there are a number of them, is going to be handled differently. Here in the singular, and by the way, I'm intentionally hoping you're growing discouraged right now. So if you're growing discouraged, don't give up. I want to teach you a more excellent way. All right, here we go. I'm going to continue on with the traditional approach for just a moment longer. So from the je, in the singular side, the je, tu, il, elle subject, I'm going to drop the RE and add SS nothing. And then for the plural side, nous, vous, il, and elle, I'm going to drop the final consonant and the RE, the D and the R and the E. And I'll add ONS, EZ, and then I'll double the N in the stem just to make things a little more difficult for you, and add ENT. And then we have the IR verbs, etc. You can memorize these charts right here, and maybe you'll find, maybe you're a traditionalist and you'll find this to be the best approach for you, the most sure method of learning to conjugate a verb in written form in French. That's fine. It's your task. We'll see who's most successful when we get to the end. Now we come to my method. What I did was I tried to take all of those endings and group them together into what you see from the je right down here to the ENT at the end here. These are all those verbs up above, and I try to make a generalization regarding what ending will be used with what subject. Okay, and it's not going to be perfect, as you see, but it's I believe, going to be easier to learn than what I just exposed you to. So this ear right here reminds you of the first step of the three-step process, and that is sound. You spell what you can hear as you conjugate a verb in French. Secondly, you ask yourself, is a silent letter necessary? So the second step is silent. Sound, silent. Is a letter necessary, a silent letter necessary at the end of this stem, the first part of the verb? And I'll explain to you why it might be as we go through the examples. And then thirdly, the last step is ending. What is the appropriate ending based upon the subject that this verb has? Okay, sound, silent, endings. So there are some exceptions here, but let me first give you a few examples. Oh, let's take trouve. We were talking about the verb to find earlier. Let's say je trouve. Sound plus silent plus endings. Okay, that's the three steps I'm going to go through. So je trouve. We already know how to say je trouve, don't we? We know that that's, it's not je trouva or je trouvons or je trouvais. It's je trouve. That you already know because you've learned how to speak the language before you've learned how to write it. So je trouve, sound. There's only one way to spell ou, and there it is. Je trouve. Okay? So that's sound. On the basis of sound alone, that is what I know so far. Silent. Do I need a silent E? You may have noticed it also talked about a silent D as a possibility. I'll talk about that later. So let's see. Do I need a silent E? Why, absolutely. We know that consonants, if they're not followed by a vowel, are silent. And so they have to have a vowel following them to make them pronounced. If you don't hear anything after the after the V, it must be there's a silent E there, making that V pronounced. So je trouve. And then last step, the endings. Now you haven't memorized those endings yet, but I'll tell you what they are. With je, it was S with an asterisk. Sorry about the asterisk, but nothing's perfect. The asterisk means that the S will only apply for RE and IR verbs. Those are the least common. The ER verbs, verbs ending in the sound E, trouver, jouer, donner, habiter, regarder, those will not have the S. So the most common kind of verb, the ER verbs, will not have that sometimes S or S asterisk. And so I don't put the S at the end of it, okay? And then I come to, let's take tu. Well, let's take a different verb. Tu regardes. For you watch, right? Tu regardes. Tu regardes, you already know how to say it. I'll spell what I can hear. Regarde. Okay. Now, silent. Do I need a silent letter? Well, yes, the D, if it's going to be pronounced, has got to have a silent letter after it. I don't hear anything. Must be the silent E. And then the endings. With tu, always S. Let's try habiter, faire, écouter. Il écoute. Okay? Il écoute. I spell what I can hear. Sound. That's not a French keyboard. Here we go. Sound. Silent. Yes. Otherwise, that would be écoute. Rules. Il was T with an asterisk. T with an asterisk means that only applies to RE and IR verbs. This is écouter. It's an ER verb, so the T does not apply. And by the way, if I were to put the T, how would that be pronounced? You know phonics already. Yeah, let me pronounce écouter. And we know that's not the right sound. So the T would be absurd even if I'd forgotten my rules or my endings. Okay? Now let me go back to the lesson itself and show you some more information. We'll go back and look at those endings. But that's the process. Sound, silent, endings. And I'll show you some exceptions that with which we have to deal. So here you see the endings. Je will sometimes end in S, and I've already explained that that means for RE and IR verbs, the S will apply. Tu will always end in S. Il and L and on, what's on? Talk about that later. Will sometimes have a T at the end of the verb's conjugation, and that sometimes applies to the RE and IR verbs. Nous will always have an O and S at the end of its verb, except for really weird ones like nous sommes. Vous will always have an EZ at the end of its verb, except for really weird ones like vous faites or vous dites. Il and L will always have an ENT, completely silent, but ENT at the end of the verb conjugation, except for really weird ones like ils ont or ils font. Okay? And so this is truly all you need to memorize. This little list of endings right here. Je, sometimes S. Tu, S. Il and L, sometimes T. Nous, ONS. Vous, EZ. Il and L, ENT. That's not asking too much. Sound, silent, rules. Now, there's some exceptions. I'm going to explain them quickly, and then if we run into them later on, we'll talk about them. If a verb stem ends in an R, it does not have to have a silent E after it to make that R pronounced. So we've talked about that before in our phonics studies, is that there's certain consonants which, when they come at the end of a word, will be pronounced even if they don't have a vowel after them. Remember the careful, CRFL acrostic that we had. Second, so let's take je pars. For je pars, I spelled it here, P-A-R. And then silent, if I need a silent E, no, the R will be pronounced anyway at the end of a stem, and so I don't need the E. And then je, sometimes S, this is an IR verb, yes, so P-A-R-S, okay? So you don't need the silent E after and when R ends the stem to make that R pronounced. Secondly, best way I can help you remember this, I had a student once who was had been a soccer player at another school, had an excellent soccer program. He came to the school where I was teaching, and he had a letter jacket that he would wear in the beginning of September when it was 85 degrees outside. He'd be wearing that letter jacket in class, in the hallway, outdoors, of course, because he was proud of his identity as a former member of that outstanding soccer program. RE verbs are a little insecure, maybe like that friend of mine as well. And they have to have their final consonant with them at all times unless the presence of that consonant would ruin the sound of the verb. Let me show you what I mean. I'll go back to the notepad here. Let's take vendre, okay? Tu vends, okay? Tu vends. Spell what you can hear. Sound. V-E-N. Vend. Now, RE verbs are invariably preceded by a consonant. Usually it's D. Could be a T. Usually it's a D. And so you want to keep that D, it's like the identity, like the letter jacket of the RE, if at all possible, without ruining the sound of the verb. So I'm going to put the D on there for now. But one thing I can't do, how could I ruin the sound of vend? Tu vends. Yeah, I could put a silent E after it, and suddenly this would be pronounced vende, wouldn't it? And that's wrong. That's not how you say the verb's conjugation. So I'm not going to put any kind of a vowel after the D. And then last of all, my rules tell me, or my endings tell me, that tu always ends in S. DS? Yeah, but it's vend. Well, yeah, remember the N, or I should say the D and the S without a vowel after them aren't going to be pronounced. So I could just keep adding some more vowels on here. And that would be pronounced vend as well. In any case, just remember that you want to keep the D at the end of an RE verb's stem, if at all possible, without spoiling, without ruining the sound of that verb. Third exception is that verbs ending in OU, I should say the stem ending in OU, it will have a silent E after it, even though it doesn't seem that it's necessary. Just live with it. And then any verb with prendre in it, in the il and el form, it doubles the N. That's weird. Why is that? To make things harder for you. And then last of all, don't let a verb end in DT. That's too Germanic. Schmidt. Es ist Deutsch. Don't put a T after a D at the end of a verb. Okay, those 5 points. I'll repeat it one more time. Don't put a silent E at the end of an R. It's not necessary. At the end of a stem, the R will be pronounced anyway. Keep that identity D, or whatever the consonant is. Usually it's a D. Before the RE, unless that would ruin the sound. Put the silent E after OU in a verb. Double the N in prendre in the third person, singular, plural, the il and el plural form. And don't put a T after a D. That's, es ist nicht richtig. Okay, good enough. Now, let's do some examples and see if my method holds up. Because this method right there, that'll keep you awake nights. You don't want to have to live with that. You want to simplify your life as much as possible. Nothing will be perfect. Nothing will be perfect. I will occasionally make mistakes with my method. Not I make mistakes, but the method will lead one into mistakes occasionally. But through experience, by trial, a certain amount of trial and error, which is going to be necessary. And I'll give you lots of lessons in which to learn this pattern or this system. Huh? And so be patient. There will be mistakes at first. Things will be imperfect, as you'll see in the very first 10 examples I'm going to do here. But for the most part, this is going to simplify your life, and it's going to make you right far, far more often than you're ever going to be wrong as you start to learn the conjugation of verbs in the present simple tense in written form in French. Here we go. Here are some examples. Okay, here we are in the homework or additional exercises section of lesson 5.4, and we'll do these as examples to see if the system of sound, silent, and endings, if it's helpful and if it makes sense to you. And you see the endings I've listed here. You'll have to memorize them, of course, but there are far fewer facts to memorize right here than with the traditional approach, which was the second approach presented earlier. Okay, we already know how to speak the language, so looking at these two images, we know this represents the idea of ils habitent. I'm going to assume that the pronoun il, you know how to write already. In case you don't, you'll pick it up very quickly because you'll be writing it over and over and over again. But in any case, we're only going to focus on the verb. So the first step is sound. Habite. I've seen habiter before. So while I don't hear it, I know there's a silent H at the beginning. So habite. Okay, that's all that I can hear. Second step, silent. Do I need a silent letter to make that T pronounced? Yes, and it's going to be the silent E. Otherwise, it would be habit, and I want habite. And then last of all, il plural. The rules tell me always E-N-T. So I already have the E, add the N-T, and there you have it, ils habitent. Now number 2. Here we have nous faisons, and so I write the pronoun. Faisons, spelling. Well, I'm going to give myself a French keyboard here. I know that the sound E can be written in a multiplicity of ways. This could be ET, it could be E with an accent aigu, it could be EZ, whoa, EZ. But I've seen the word faire. In the last lesson, lesson 5.3, we've had to deal with the spellings of the original form called the infinitive of the verb. And so I know that the E sound is an AI. Nous faisons. That's all I can hear so far. Nous faisons. Silent. Do I want a silent E after the N? No, that'd make it faisons. That's not the way the word is said. We know that. And so the endings tell me nous always ends in ONS. Voila, we're 2 for 2. Next, we're going to look at number 3. And number 3 is il écoute. Il écoute. Il écoute. Et, cou, only one way to spell the sound ou, t. Okay, that's sound. That's what I can hear. Now silent. Do I need a silent E to make the T pronounced? Yes. And then il. The endings say sometimes T, but the sometimes T only applies to RE and IR verbs, not to the more common ER verbs, and this is an ER verb, écouter. And so it's because it's écouter. It's not écoutir. It's not écoutre. It's écouter. And so the sometimes T will not apply. In fact, if I added it, since you know phonics, how would that be pronounced with the T? Yeah, it'd be écouter. And we don't want that sound. And so even if we didn't remember the rules, we could tell that would make no sense. All right, let's go on to number 4. Number 4 is je lave. So far we're 3 for 3. The system of sound, silent, endings, no problem. It's worked well for us. Je lave. Je, and then lave. Sound, silent, yes. To make the V pronounced, I need the silent E. And then rules. Sometimes S, but this is laver. It's an ER verb. Nope. The sometimes S will not apply. We're 4 for 4. Number 5 here. We come to a sneaky one, a tricky one. This is unfortunately not vous disiez. It's not vous dites. It's vous dites, isn't it? It's vous dites. And so nothing's perfect in this world. No matter which approach you use, you're going to have to memorize this particular spelling for 2 reasons, as you'll see. So in any case, I'll try to apply my sound to silent endings approach. Dit, sound. Silent, yes. I need the silent E to make the T pronounced. Endings, easy. Yeah, but that's vous dites. That's wrong. And so it's got to be some other letter, if any at all, which is going to follow the E, because I can't have the sound E. Well, as you will see, as you become accustomed to this word and see it multiple times in exercises, it's with an S, vous dites. And by the way, the I also has a circumflex, oh, it's not a tréma, a circumflex, vous dites. That one, I guess you could say we're 4 out of 5, but no system is perfect with a verb like that one. Okay, number 6. Elle prépare. And this is going to be a tricky one too, a little bit. You'll see. Elle prépare. Sound. Oh, excuse me. Silent. I remember that it said if the stem ends in an R, the R doesn't need a silent E to be pronounced, so I don't need the E. Rules. Sometimes T, it's an ER verb. Nope, that will not apply. And so there it is. Elle prépare. That doesn't look right to me. Something seems wrong about elle prépare written like that. My suspicion quotient has been raised because I've seen it in print in the elementary reading we've done enough times to recognize that some seems louche. Something seems kind of fishy here. Well, elle prépare. If there's another letter necessary, what could I add that wouldn't change the spelling of the word? I could add any consonant. That would, I mean, the sound of the word. That wouldn't change the sound of the word. I could add a silent E. That looks pretty good to me. I'm going to go with a silent E. Okay? And so this is one of those times where the 3-step process, if I say that an R at the end of a stem does not need the silent E after it, seems to break down. But already, since I'm suspicious, applying the E makes sense, since it will not change the sound of the stem. Okay. You're probably dissatisfied with that. I am too. Let's move on. Je mange. Sound. All right. Silent. Yes, because the G is pronounced. Rules. Sometimes S, ER verb. Nope. All right. Now we're back on track. And number 8. Vous aimez. Vous aimez. Whoops, I scrolled right past the spot. There we go. Vous aimez. Vous aimez. Now, A can be written a whole bunch of different ways. Could be ET, could be EZ, could be E accent aigu, it could be ER. All kinds of ways it could be written. Well, let's just go through the process. Sound is M, and then there's an A after that. Silent. Yeah, there's got to be a consonant after the M, otherwise the M is not going to be pronounced. Rules. Vous always ends in EZ. It always ends in EZ, and EZ makes the sound E, and so vous aimez. There we have it. Vous aimez. We're about 6 or 7 out of 8, depending on how you look at it. Okay, let's go to number 9 now. Elle regarde. Elle regarde. Sound. Silent, yes, to make the D pronounced. And then rules. Sometimes T with L. It's an ER verb, so no. Elle regarde. There we go. We got it. And let's do one more. Number 10 here. Tu mets. Ah, this should be a challenging one. Tu mets. Tu mets. Now the A sound can be made with an accent aigu, with an AI, with an EZ. All kinds of ways it can be made. I know the verb is mettre, and I know it's written like this because we worked with that in the last lesson. So I'm going to guess the ET is being used to make the sound E. Because ET does make the sound E. And so tu mets. Now that's sound. Silent. Do I want to put a silent E? No, that'd be met. We don't want that. Rules. Always S. Voila. Tu mets. Well, I hope that's helpful. You choose a system that you think is going to work best for you. Memorize all the conjugations. Good luck. Or learn the groupings of verbs and apply the drop from the stem, what you need to drop, or I should say drop from the infinitive form of the verb, the original form of the verb, what you need to drop, add what you need to add. Remember how much of the stem you drop. Or my approach, which is sound, silent, endings with a few intriguing exceptions. And over the course of the next several lessons, we'll be going through all of the verbs and learning the first 2 units. You'll have so much practice that I think you'll find one of the 3 will work best. And I dare say, I think mine is head and shoulders above the rest.